how did you get the idea for Edge of Quarrel? Because, and I've always wanted to tell you this, the minute that I heard about that movie, and I remember this literally like it was yesterday. I think I heard about it from Greg Bennick. I was like, man, I wish I would have made that movie. So how did the idea come to you?
Okay. So all through the 90s, I wanted to be involved in filmmaking, and I was not from a background where that was something that I had in my past. I did not, the idea of even like being able to afford a video camera wasn't something that all through the 80s, and I would have never, that was just out of my reach. It's really poor. It was hard enough to just get skateboards, you know? And then in the 90s, I started talking to my buddy, Bill Baker. How could we make a movie? Could we do this? Could we do that? And he knew about all kinds of tech stuff. He'd be like, dude, we need to spend at least this much money. You need, and I just wanted to do the label. I couldn't think about it. And then I saw this film called Walking Between the Raindrops that somebody made. This is a true story. I showed it to my friend Matt Matsuoka, and he immediately said, like while we were watching it, I am making a movie. Like,
this is so bad. If he can make this movie, I'm making a movie.
I mean, that's listen. Take that from both sides.
I love it. I am honored.
Because like it's not like you could look at the movie Matt made, which was called Heartbreak Beat, or look at my movie that was also directly inspired by you, and then through being involved in the process with Matt, seeing how it would work, and being like, okay, I can make this work. Any criticism that we would make of anybody would make of your movie, just make of ours too. That's part of just how it works. But man, that blew our minds. We saw that it could be done, and it's just like everything along the way. Saw that someone could make a record and put out a record. Saw that someone could do a band. Saw someone do it, and they trailblaze. Like they go out and they figure out the tour stops, right? And then you go on tour next year. So Matt and I went on tour the year after you did.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because you came to it. I mean, I was sort of similar, just in the sense of I'd done Ringside Records for a very short amount of time, but Ringside, compared to what Excursion Records was, would literally be like comparing a match to a bonfire. Like you literally had. Well, I'm saying, dude, you had Undertow. You had like.
I want to say a match to like a slightly larger match. And the bonfires were like real labels.
Well, no, but dude, you distributed bands. You were in like this hub, especially at that time, Seattle at that time. Just I'm saying Sub Pop, like kind of all that stuff. But you came to it. You already basically, which I mean, I kind of did, but you had distribution kind of already. Like, did that feel good? Knowing, okay, wait, I'm gonna make this. I'll put music into it, so that angle could be interesting to people. Like, did that kind of ever come into your mind?
All of that was part of it, because the idea was at no point did I think a lot of filmmakers think they'll make a movie and then they'll sell the movie. And I didn't think that for a second. I thought it would come out on Excursion.
Right.
And maybe I'd get a few people to watch it, and maybe I'd screen it a couple times and make the money back for it, which would only cost a few $1,000s, you know. And yeah, that was it. And then I just thought, well, I'll make VHS copies and sell them through Excursion. Maybe I'll make 100. Maybe I did 200. Let's see how they do. And in the end, I ended up making like 1,200 copies of it on VHS, I think, and then I did a DVD release later. So
how many did you do on DVD ultimately?
2,000.
Gotcha. Okay.
2,000 of the U.S. release, but there was a German and Spanish release of it also.
Cydonia.
And there's Cydonia, yes. And then why can't I think of? I'm so sorry. Trust, the guys from Trust did the German one, and then. At one point, there was going to be a Russian version of it, and they sent me a message and said, can you send us a script? We're making a DVD version of your movie, and we want to make sure the subtitles are right. And they weren't saying like, hey, we want to make a deal. They were like, no, we're doing a bootleg. We just want, and I said, oh, cool. Here you go. Here's the script. Make sure the subtitles are right. Because what am I going to do at that point, you know?
Well, that's what's interesting. Like, you bring up two things that are really interesting is the idea of, and just sort of the sort of empowerment of, I'm going to make this and I'm going to do this myself, which is like, don't get me wrong, like I make a bunch of movies now, like and there's something that I make and I know I'm going to be releasing it. I'm going to be doing the digital, and depending on the kind of movie that it is, I'll be doing the DVD. But then there are other movies that I make, and it's usually the movies that I put way more time into, that maybe before I go down the Anadina Films distribution route, I will kind of, whatchamacallit, sort of show it around a little bit more. But I was gonna ask you one thing that I often find, because I would find people that would want to release the movies, but then you start looking at their deals, and then you kind of realize they're not going to really do much more for your movie than, I mean, a few times that's bitten me in the ass. But have you found that in your dealings with distribution?
For the movie specifically?
Yeah, well, I'm or all of it, because then I have another question that you just made me think of that I'm going to write down.
Oh, no, I'm totally happy with the way stuff happened with the movie. Everybody that was involved with that was great. With a record label, you have all kinds of trouble. You got people who don't pay, or my deal that I ended up getting for Excursion for a lot of the 90s was with Dutch East India Trading when they were around. They had done, I had just been sending records that I was distributing for friends to them. So Dutch East would send out these faxes to record stores, and every week they'd get orders based off that, and they'd sell out everything that I sent them. And so eventually they said, hey, we're doing really well with you with this stuff that we're distributing. We could pay for records, do like a P&D deal. And so I was doing that, and the deal I made with them was, it doesn't have to be every record I put out. It's a record that I can't afford to do. So I'd do 7 inches and compilations and stuff, and then I'd get something like the Undertow where we just couldn't put the money up, and they'd be like, hey, here's recording money. We're going to do real covers. We're going to do CDs, And so I did that with them for 10 releases. It was fine, but then, I had no control over how it got distributed, or things like that barcodes would get put on them, things like that people were worried about that stuff at the time, right?
Right.
And yeah, I think I probably ended up doing more than I could have otherwise because of that deal. But in the end, it just came to an end. It was fine. I did 10 records that way. I don't know. I don't have any complaints about it, other than I couldn't just open the books and look at the numbers. Well, and I would have liked to have been able to do that.
Is that why? Because I know a lot of people, me probably being one of them, that at that time had someone come to me and said, let's even just say with my movies, although I did have some problems with this, so maybe it wouldn't have been as easy, but literally came to me and said, hey, if someone would have said, hey, we'll put out your movies, we're going to give you X amount of money, deliver this amount. I mean, I would have done every movie through them. At least I think that I would. Why did you still want to release? Why did you still want to put out? Why did you want to work with your hands? Why do you want to? Why not just sort of be like the mogul and, oh, I'll do this, this, and this? What was that thought process?
So, I've always been that guy. I had a skateboard shop when I was 16 years old. It was an actual store in Bellingham that was open for 2 years, and we did all that pretty much ourselves also. And I started the record label, and I'd done, up until the point with the Dutch East, I'd done everything myself. I didn't want to go from, if you were like, oh yeah, you'll never have to make your own handmade cover again, you're not going to have to stamp covers and number anything, I'd be like, well, then why am I doing it?
Gotcha.
Where am I going to get my artistic output and creative? I don't really play music. It's all my friends are the ones that are talented that can make these great songs and do these awesome things. This is how I play my part. So yeah, I wanted to, and I was still involved. I was still involved with layouts and things, but I wasn't willing to, because there was an offer that they could just take over everything, and I would just make decisions. And I said, I don't want to do that. I would rather just not do it at all than do that. And I said, okay, well, we'll just do records on a 1-by-1 basis for you if you want. You just make the decision. Tell us. I thought that was really cool. I also liked that they were just willing to be like, okay, whatever. Just you tell us the amount of control you want us to have, and we'll go with that.
No, that's cool.
So that was good. But if I have to be, got to be hands-on.
Well, no, I mean, and that's the thing, is that's one thing that I've sort of found along the way. Like I've sort of come to realize, like I like the distribution stuff. Like I love that aspect of it. Like I love kind of contacting people and, oh, you're gonna take the movies, or, oh, I made X amount, on streaming, or, oh, hey, like some movies I'm gonna do a DVD for, some movies I'm not. And now what I find that it's about is, well, packaging. Like how can I package this? Like for instance, finding that distributor recently, and with the Edge of Quarrel DVDs that I'm distributing, and say, I'm gonna make an X pin, just because why not? There should be a pin that should go with this, that people buy it, whether they're straight edge or not, whether they know anything about straight edge, they're gonna get an X pin. So, and there's more on that I want to talk to you about later. But
oh yeah, sure, absolutely.
But what I wanted to ask now was, how'd you write that script for Edge of Quarrel? How long did it take you? Was it a long process? What's the deal?
Okay, so I was real inspired by Robert Rodriguez's Rebel Without a Crew book.
Which appears in Heartbreak Beat.
Oh yeah, it does. Okay,
he's in the parking lot or something, and it may be Rocky holding it,
that would be Jeff DeGolyer playing. We're talking about Heartbreak Beat or Edge of Quarrel.
In Heartbreak, because I don't think it appears in Edge of Quarrel, or am I wrong?
So no, I don't know that it does or not. I can't remember because I'm old, but I'm pretty sure Jeff is in a parking lot and Carrie Whitney's character comes over to him and he's reading a book.
Gotcha.
I think that must be it. And Matt was really inspired by Rodriguez also. Come on. At the time, it was
all of us. Come on, dude. You read that and wait a minute, he did that for $7,000 and then Sony bought it and blah blah blah. Yeah.
Yep. And so I was driving for Kinko's, and I had tried writing scripts before. So I tried to write a script, had no idea how to do it, was just writing words on paper. I had an idea I was going to make this movie called Doubting Thomas about it. There's a guy that's possessed by a demon. I don't know. I was going to do this thing with all my friends, and then I was going to make this thing that was a series of shorts. I kept writing this stuff down and never knowing how I was going to do it. And then I went and got a book called, it's on a shelf, it's over here, Screenwriting 434 by Lou Hunter.
Okay, yeah. Book. I mean, I've not read that, but I know that book, yeah.
And so reading that was the first time it was like, oh, there's rules to how to do this. So he talked about a step outline. So I just took a notebook with me to work, and I was driving around this delivery truck, and it's a lot of time to think, I'm at stoplights. Sometimes I'd be at stoplights scribbling in this notebook, and there'd be a honk, and I'd have to go. It was like pre-cell phones, but I'm still distracted driving, writing my script. So once I had notes, then I went, okay, now I'm going to go home and make this look like a script. So I just used Word and just recreated all the different, columns, that you need for dialogue and stuff. The first time I showed somebody, before I had a screenwriting software program, I showed somebody a script, and she read it. She said, your ellipses are wrong. Did you write this in Word? And I was like, I did. And she was like, I can't believe it. Like, it's exact other than that. And I don't think this was Edge of Quarrel. I think this was something else that I'd written. But
what do you write in now?
Okay, so right now I'm working on a feature, like a found footage feature with a friend of mine in LA named James Ersted. And we've been going back and forth co-writing this thing. And I'm doing a touch-up on it right now to send to him, and it's an indie film. He's going to start filming it before too long. We've been working on that for a couple of years.
But what do you guys write in? Like, are you in final draft? Are you in...
Sorry,
No, don't worry. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to all that. No. And that's rad. By the way, you're very smart to do a found footage film, and you're very genres. No, I'm like, horror is like horror, the sci-fi stuff. Found footage. A lot of that stuff, from what I've seen and from the distributors that I deal with, especially with my movies and just talking to people in general, what's the word? the genres. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I happen to love that stuff. So, I mean, I'm not just making. Oh, that's what I could maybe sell is because no. Like, I genuinely love that stuff. But I mean, hearing that you're doing that, I'm like, okay. He's probably going to be very pleasantly surprised by the avenues that he's going to find this is able to go down.
Oh, I certainly hope so. James is putting his all into it, and it's his story. He was the one that came to me with a. We changed it a couple times, but the whole time he's been, we should do this found footage, and here's how we would do it, and try to make it not fall into the pitfalls of other found footage. I bet you every person that made a found footage movie after the first couple, like they got big, they're like, how do we do one that doesn't fall into the pitfalls? The pitfalls probably you don't even anticipate the ones you're going to fall into necessarily.
Right. But then
no, final draft. I'm trying to answer that question. Final draft is what I use now.
Which is amazing. The amazing thing about Final Draft, because and I often talk with Mike Hartsfield about this, is like, because I started with Final Draft 1 when it was on discs, and now you can like I do it on my iPad, and what's crazy is like this, like it's like $10 to like get it on your iPad. I'm like, this thing is amazing. But the craziest thing was like when I first bought Final Draft, it was like 300 something bucks. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of money. And then I remember I was writing a script with Darren Doan, and I noticed he's writing this thing in Word, just like what you said. And I'm sitting there going like that's when it really hit me. Like, it really doesn't matter if you can make it look. I mean, I guess it probably, obviously, for you and that Mr. Erstead gentleman, it probably mattered just in terms of, you send him something, he sends you something.
Yeah, it's easier now for sure.
Yeah.
We send each other the final draft files. Yeah.
But then, so then overall, how long would you say that it took you to get Edge of Quarrel written? From the notebook to the typing up in Word.
Probably answered this question before differently. 6 to 9 months.
Gotcha.
I don't know, because a lot of it was also, it would go through changes, ideas about what it was going to be, and then I'd also be talking about, because as soon as I was done with it, I was not going to write another draft of it. I'm going to film the movie, right?
Of course.
So a lot of it was also, okay, here are the things I'm going to have access to. Now I can write that scene. It wasn't like I'd write the scene necessarily and then go find out how to do it. I wouldn't write the scene until I knew I could use the record store, or I could, so stuff like that,
Wow, no, that's interesting. So you didn't write it and just like kind of write the whole thing and then go and try to find the places. You would write and then maybe stop for a little bit and be like, okay, wait, I need to talk to so-and-so to see if I can get access to this or that.
I think so, but bear in mind, it being almost 25 years ago now, it's hard to remember how much time was passing there. So one big thing that I was doing is Singles Going Steady was a record store that had opened up in Seattle, and Derek Fidesco from Motor City Devils was working in there, and the owner Pete. And I would stop in because they were between where my deliveries were and where the Kinko's was. So I would stop in and talk to them, and I'd be like, here's today's idea. And so I was telling them about things I was going to do and just having fun talking trash with those guys. And so it just kind of, that is the record store that appears in the movie multiple times. So a lot of the movie was actually kind of conceptualized either on the way to that record store or in that record store also.
Then
so that's one example. But then it's not like I would stop for months at a time. I would just I didn't know how long it should take to write a script or what kind of time frame I was on. So I feel like it took more than 6 months.
Do you write faster now?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. As long as, yeah. Then I wrote a pilot for an hour-long TV show a couple of years ago, and I think I had 24 days or something from the day I first heard about it, where the person I was talking to was like, "Hey, here's this idea I have. Do you want to partner with me on it?" And we need to have a thing to submit on this date. I was like, oh, and just kind of dove in and created the whole thing. And so, yeah, I can go a fair amount faster now.
Gotcha.
I'm not writing anything in a week, though. I'm not one of those people.
Gotcha. Do you think that you could? Like let's say if you had to and you're told, okay, there is, I'll throw up a number. There's $10,000 at the end of this week if you hand in a script.
Oh, it would depend on so many things, but
you could do it. You could do it. You've been
right.
writing this long. You could totally do it.
It's a script about two guys that meet at a coffee shop. One of them's a cop, and one of them's a guy I went to high school with who's like the local head gangster. And they're basically just going to like bury their beef with each other because they've been enemies on the streets for the last 20 years, which is literally something I was going to write in the 90s.
A few bands later, Carrie Nation took the stage. Shortly after that, Judge, a band from New York, took the stage. Andrew and I left a few songs into their set. As I was leaving, Nelson introduced me to Greg Brown, Scott Sundahl, Paul T., and other members of a group known as the Orange County Sloth Crew. Eventually, they would nickname me Mushnik, which was a character I had been in a high school play. On the ride home, I had no idea that those people I had just met would become and would be the gateway to the best friends I would ever have.